No one else could have done it," and he flushed angrily. "And all the while Oscar kept on altering it for the worse. At last I had to tell him the truth, and we had a row. He imagines he's the greatest person in the world, and the only person to be considered. His conceit is stupid. I helped him again and again with that ballad of Reading Gaol you're always praising. I suppose he'd deny that now. He's got his money back. What more can he want? He disgusts me when he begs." I could not contain myself altogether. "He seems to blame you," I said quietly, "for egging him on to that insane action against your father, which brought him to ruin." "I've no doubt he'd find some reason to blame me," he whipped out. "How did I know how the case would go? Why did he take my advice if he didn't want to? He was surely old enough to know his own interest. He's simply disgusting now. He's getting fat and bloated, and always demanding money, 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 like a daughter of the horseleech, just as if he had a claim to it." I could not stand it any longer. I had to try to move him to kindness. Sometimes one gives willingly to a man one has never had anything from. Misery and want in one we like and admire have a very strong claim. "I do not see that there is any claim at all," he cried bitterly, as if the very word maddened him. "And I am not going to pamper him any more. He could earn all the money he wants if he would only write. But he won't do anything. He is lazy, and getting lazier and lazier every day. And he drinks far too much. He is intolerable. I thought when he kept asking me for that money tonight, he was like an old prostitute." "Good God!" I cried. "Good God, has it come to that between you?" "Yes," he repeated, not heeding what I said. "He was just like an old fat prostitute," and he gloated over the word, "and I told him so." I looked at the man, but could not speak. Indeed, there was nothing to be said. Surely at last, I thought, Oscar Wilde has reached the lowest depth. I could think of nothing but Oscar. This hard, small, bitter nature made Oscar's suffering plain to me. "As I can do no good," I said, "do you mind letting me sleep? I'm simply tired to death." "I'm sorry," he said, looking for his hat. "Will you come out in the morning and see the G.'s?" "I don't think so," I replied. "I'm incapable of a resolution now. I'm so tired I would rather sleep. I think I'll go up to Paris in the morning. I have something rather urgent to do." He said good night and went away. I lay awake, my eyes prickling with sorrow and sympathy for poor Oscar, insulted in his misery and destitution, outraged and trodden on by the man he had loved, by the man who had thrust him into the pit. I made up my mind to go to Oscar at once and try to comfort him a little. After all, I thought, another £50 or so wouldn't make a great deal of difference to me, and I dwelt on the many delightful hours I had passed with him, hours of gay talk and superb intellectual enjoyment. I went up by the morning train to Paris and drove across the river to Oscar's hotel. He had 2 rooms, a small sitting room and a still smaller bedroom adjoining. He was lying half dressed on the bed as I entered. The rooms affected me unpleasantly. They were ordinary mean little French rooms, furnished without taste. The usual mahogany chairs, gilt clock on the mantelpiece, and a preposterous bilious paper on the walls. What struck me was the disorder everywhere. Books all over the round table, books on the chairs, books on the floor, and higgledy-piggledy. Here a pair of socks, there a hat and cane, and on the floor his overcoat. The sense of order and neatness which he used to have in his rooms at Tite Street was utterly lacking. He was not living here, intent on making the best of things. He was merely existing without plan or purpose. I told him I wanted him to come to lunch. While he was finishing dressing, it came to me that his clothes had undergone much the same change as his dwelling. In his golden days in London, he had been a good deal of a dandy. He usually wore white waistcoats at night, was particular about the flowers in his buttonhole, his gloves and cane. Now he was decently dressed, and that was all, as far below the average as he had been above it. Clearly he had let go of himself, and no longer took pleasure in the vanities. It seemed to me a bad sign. I had always thought of him as very healthy, likely to live till 60 or 70. But he had no longer any hold on himself, and that depressed me. Some spring of life seemed broken in him. Bosie Douglas's second betrayal had been the coup de grâce. In the carriage he was preoccupied, out of sorts, and immediately began to apologize. "I shall be poor company, Frank," he warned me with quivering lips. The fragrant summer air in the Champs-Élysées seemed to revive him a little, but he was evidently lost in bitter reflections, and scarcely noticed where he was going. From time to time he sighed heavily, as if oppressed. I talked as well as I could of this and that, tried to lure him away from the hateful subject that I knew must be in his mind, but all in vain. Towards the end of the lunch he said gravely: "I want you to tell me something, Frank. I want you to tell me honestly if you think I am in the wrong. I wish I could think I was. You know I spoke to you the other day about Bosie. He is rich now, and he is throwing his money away with both hands in racing. I asked him to settle £1,500 or £2,000 on me to buy me an annuity, or to do something that would give me £150 a year. You said you did not care to ask him, so I did. I told him it was really his duty to do it at once, and he turned round and lashed me savagely with his tongue. He called me dreadful names, said dreadful things to me, Frank. I did not think it was possible to suffer more than I suffered in prison, but he has left me bleeding." And the fine eyes filled with tears. Seeing that I remained silent, he cried out: "Frank, you must tell me for our friendship's sake. Is it my fault? Was he wrong or was I wrong?" His weakness was pathetic. Or was it that his affection was still so great that he wanted to blame himself rather than his friend? "Of course he seems to me to be wrong," I said, "utterly wrong." I could not help saying it, and I went on. "But you know his temper is insane. If he even praises himself, as he did to me lately, he gets into a rage in order to do it, and perhaps unwittingly you annoyed him by the way you asked. If you put it to his generosity and vain glory, you would get it easier than from his sense of justice and right. He has not much moral sense." "Oh, Frank," he broke in earnestly, "I put it to him as well as I could, quite quietly and gently. I talked of our old affection, of the good and evil days we had passed together.